Hey everyone, it's People of Substance by LemonSkies, and my guest today is Chris Weiland from RKD Group. He heads up creative division there, and I've been trying to get him to be on People of Substance for a little while. So please say hi.
Hey y'all.
So Chris, I'm going to jump right in. You and I got to know each other as part of planning for Bridge Conference. We were on the same committee, which I actually came out with several really great friends out of it. But before you joined the nonprofit sector, you worked with some pretty major corporate brands. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So I'm a group creative director at RKD Group. Before that, I worked at a couple different agencies. I've been agency side my entire career, but those agencies serve the commercial sector. So most recently, I worked for an agency in Dallas called the Marketing Arm, and my cornerstone client was AT&T. Some people may have heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked with Bridgestone, Weightwatchers, Red Lobster, and I've been blessed to do a lot of different things in my career. I'm still pretty new to fundraising. I didn't come to RKD Group with a fundraising nonprofit direct response background. And so what I think some people may see as a weakness of not having decades of experience, I find of great value in being able to bring a different perspective to the work that we do and think a little bit differently, which I found that my clients, it's incredibly valuable to them.
So Chris, what's different about Weightwatchers, the Red Lobster, besides the budgets, obviously, versus a nonprofit cause? And where do you see additional challenges? And where do you find that it's actually more opportunities?
First, I think it's worth saying that they're actually somewhat similar in that ultimately you have a consumer, you have a donor, and you're trying to meet their needs. It's different in that we don't, in the commercial sector, have a good or a service that we're selling, mm-hmm. versus in nonprofit, it's more of an existential need. So there is both an internal need for self-identity for the donor. Everybody wants to think of themselves as a good person and doing good and helping people. And then the external need is obviously so many different industries, be it cancer research, meeting the needs of the hungry, animal welfare, all of these different places where people can take action to do good. And that reflects on how they see themselves. But with AT&T, you're selling connection. With Red Lobster, you're selling seafood. With Bridgestone, you're selling tires. With nonprofits, you're selling feeling good about what you're doing and giving back to things that you really care about and being able to be passionate about that.
That you got deep there for a second, so thank you for that. So I have a lot of questions for you about creativity. I think you're the first creativity dedicated guest on People of Substance. And I wanted to ask you about how do you align creativity and strategy? Because sometimes there are ideas that are brilliant, but they don't really, aside from the sizzle, they don't really support the strategic objectives.
I'll say that the best creatives I've ever met are strategic thinkers, and the best strategists I've ever worked with are also creative thinkers. So I don't think they're as dissimilar as people often believe between creative and strategy. And I found it works phenomenally well when it's treated as a partnership. So mm-hmm. when a creative director is brought in early to have a conversation with the strategist that helps them better understand the strategy and the objectives of what we're trying to do, it allows them to poke holes in that and kind of see its future state. It allows probably the most important thing that I think gets overlooked, which is identifying the problem we're trying to solve. And as I said, we're kind of selling or we're trying to meet this existential need for a donor. So they usually have three problems. They'll have an external problem, an internal problem, and a philosophical problem. So being able to identify those within the strategy and then bring tactics and strategy to bear on that allows the creative some guardrails in terms of how we're looking at what we would recommend or what we would propose as solutions for that.
Mhm.
And then going from there to which we think is the most valid. And what we do is we test. And so you get to discover one of my favorite things about my job is I get to be wrong. And through the course of testing, become less wrong. And so we learn about what motivators are there for donors. Like you, I sometimes get bored doing the same thing over and over again. So it allows the interaction with a really broad set of different causes, different industries. You get to learn constantly. So if you're propelled and powered by curiosity like I am, it's this endless pursuit of learning about things and better understanding those things.
So, Chris, it would be hard to have a conversation today about creativity or really anything without bringing up artificial intelligence. So, where does it play a role in creative space, and where do you see opportunities? Are there any aspects of it that you find a little frightening or a little bit cause for concern?
I'll give my perspective. And so this is my perspective on it. I see it as a tremendous opportunity. I tend to look at it optimistically. I know some folks are afraid that their job is going to be outsourced to a machine. I see it as a tool for empowerment for creativity. And I've said that I think the future of AI and creative is going to turn creatives into creative directors, because things that ordinarily you'd have to produce or find, you can now create. Processes that may take a lot of time can now be automated. And so I think it will strengthen the need for really valid ideas and valid creative thinking. And it'll kind of cut the chaff from the wheat in terms of the people who are thinking that way. But it has strengths and weaknesses. Some of the strengths are that process of automation, and things that would have been the minutia of mechanical tasks can be automated and blown out. I mean, I don't know a single art director who enjoys making 11 ad sizes. And so the ability to make a hero ad and then have it built out and then play creative director and give feedback on that so that it's tailored and crafted to your liking is a huge advantage. In terms of retouching, being able to retouch images really quickly and effectively. For example, image composition, something as simple as rule of thirds. With Photoshop's generative AI tool that's in the app, you can recompose your photo and create very believable backgrounds that weren't there before. And I mean, like, if you want to center your person, your subject within the right third, but the image is centered on them, you can move it over and create that background so that you have room for your headline. And then as a research tool, I use it quite a bit. In particular, Perplexity is a great research tool to learn more. The downside is you also have to kind of fact check your AI, because it's an aggregate of what's out there, but it's not always checking to see if that's true. So you need to check the sources and make sure that it's from a valid source. There are some tremendous tools, like 11 Labs has a tool that can take text and put it in voiceover and do it in an incredibly believable manner. I recently created a video and used AI voiceover, and then had a reveal that it was actually AI. You can dictate to it and it will put it in another voice. So I don't have a particularly feminine voice, but we wanted a female VO talent for this. And nobody knew the difference. So it worked out really well, very believable. But the negative side of it is it doesn't, I'd say its hindrance, its limitations are really where humans are most strong. AI is not good at making broad strategic decisions. Think about in building connections that are seemingly unrelated. That's the power of concept, is taking something somebody doesn't understand and then showing them something that they do and drawing that connection so they better understand it. And think about how really great comedy works. There's always a turn, a twist, a surprise where you're like, oh, I didn't see that. and that's where AI really hasn't come close to the spark, the human spark that people and creative people can create.
Where do the ethics come in, especially with imagery?
Oh, 100%. That's a great topic. We're involved in fundraising.ai and trying to lead that because it's such a crucial thing, especially for nonprofits. One of the most dangerous things about AI is going to be retaining trust. I mean, we've all seen fictional photos that have put in circulation on the internet, and the believability of things is getting more realistic. And so it's essential that, for example, we use what I call AI with a seatbelt. So our ground rules are anything that you could do manually, for example, retouching, that you can do with AI and do it in a fraction of the time, fair game. But we don't create generative images that are misrepresenting what one of our clients does in terms of serving people or serving animals or meeting a need. And I think that's crucial to retain and gain trust with brands. The dangerous future of AI is that people are going to lose trust overall, I think, in what they see and what they hear, because AI can replicate images in a very believable manner. So ethics are crucial, and it's important to have a baseline to make those decisions so that you don't go too far down that road and do something that might break that trust.
I really like the distinction you're making. Can you do it by hand? And if AI helps you make it a little bit quicker, great, fair game. If you cannot achieve it as a human, then take a beat. So, not surprisingly, nonprofit budgets are finite. So one of the questions I had for you from creative perspective and executing great ideas, where do you recommend nonprofits invest, and where are places that don't throw the good money after the bad?
Well, you're asking the wrong guy, because creatives are in the job of spending money, and CFOs are in the business of saving it. So they're the ones that tell us no. We come up with the really expensive, really good ideas. But I would say the biggest, we're kind of at an apex or a crossroads with how nonprofits are thinking about their budget. And I think one of the biggest challenges is the segmentation or siloing of budgets within channels. So you'll have a digital budget, a direct mail budget, a broadcast budget, a radio budget, and all of these things are segmented. And so that really goes back to the need for attribution to justify those budgets, where particular teams or departments need to show that that investment is worthwhile and has a good ROI, that in fundraising, our digital program is fundraising well. But the other side of that is that people they're not mono-channel in terms of how they consume things. So we read our mail, we check our emails, we look at ads, we have a social feed, we watch streaming TV. And so to think of somebody as only a direct mail donor, it kind of hides the fact that we don't look at the world that way. And so I think the more we've moved to an audience focus because of that, because that's the way, it's a human-centered philosophy, because that's the way that you and I and the people watching this experience the world. We don't tune into a single channel, but we experience it in this symphony of different things. And so bringing these budgets together and thinking about it more holistically allows for a couple of really good things. It allows for a more cohesive and comprehensive experience for a donor. So you have more alignment between different channels. You can tell one story, which is a huge component of branding, is having a unified story, a unified message, a unified brand presence that somebody experiences. It shouldn't feel like a schizophrenic experience where you're one person over here and you're one person over here. It should feel like the same voice and like you're talking to the same organization. but it also allows for more critical and careful selection of how you talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if I don't read the mail, if I'm a Gen Z or millennial donor, and I think everybody is painfully aware that you're far less likely to reach a donor through the mail if they're a younger donor, then reinvesting in channels where they are spending their attention makes a lot of sense. And you are going to be hard pressed to reach the next generation of donors. We'll just say Gen X, if you're trying to talk to them in places where they're not focused and they're not listening.
So it sounds like alignment between channels, and it sort of sounds like direct response team got to allows for more fluidity and just more cohesion. And cohesion does not mean the same story slept in different channel. It means cohesion.
Yeah, I think relevance within each channel is crucial. So your expected experience in a social feed is so much different than when you receive an email. I mean, you have, and even in terms of attention span, the attention span in a social feed is something like 0.3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen, I mean, you have kids, you have older kids, they're just swiping and scrolling. So, I mean, you don't get long to make an impression. And so the way that you talk to people, kind of in the language or the vernacular of that channel, is crucial.
And you're not competing with other nonprofits in that channel. You're competing with cute cats and memes, right? Like,
yeah.
So, Chris, you and I met in nonprofit sector. I don't think we've actually ever worked together, but we were on the same volunteer committee. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement in the sector?
Sure. I mean, it's primarily in terms of the sector outside of my agency, been involved with Bridge, the Bridge conference. I've been involved for 3 years now. And so I started just jumping in, basically being an art director and helping develop the theme for the conference, the logo lockup and some of that branding. And then was asked to be a creative co-chair the following year, and have been one of the creative co-chairs for the last 2 years. Helping to develop the theme and the concept behind the conference, and have just had the pleasure of working with people across the industry. I think when we work for agencies, we tend to, like you, Olga, absolutely. I mean, I've been able to meet some amazing people and learn from them. And again, I'm just a insatiable learner. And so being able to hear from other people and what they're experiencing and what they know, I know what I don't know. And so being able to hear from them is empowering and informative, and really helps me be better at what I do. So being able to listen to other people and hear their perspectives. And that's such an important thing about being a creative, particularly in fundraising, that I don't know is expressed strongly enough, that we need to be able to see the world through somebody else's eyes and perspective and represent that. So even if it's a cause that doesn't pull at our heartstrings, we have to be able to see through the eyes of the donor and the client, and being exposed to more broad segments of nonprofits, I think is incredibly helpful. But I've really enjoyed working with everybody at the Bridge. Loved working with Justin last year, and loved working with Marie and the committee this year. They've been so collaborative and open to ideas. And as a creative guy, I love playing jazz. I love the yes and of creativity. When I cut my teeth in as a professional, we had a rule for brainstorms called no bazookas. So you never submarine or bazooka somebody's idea and say like, oh, that's a bad idea. You always play jazz. So you always say yes and, or, oh, well, what if we did this? Like, that made me think of this direction we could take it. So I love and thrive in collaborative environments and brainstorms, and everybody has been so incredibly open to that.
Well, I can't wait to see the theme of next year's Bridge. The Olympic theme this year was very timely, and that was a stroke of genius. So I can't wait to see what you come up with for next year.
Looking forward to it.
So just to wrap up, to have a little fun, and I've known you, but I'm still getting to know you. what are a few things about Chris Weiland that we can't see from your CV or from your presence in the professional space? What are 3 things about you?
3 things. I wouldn't say I had a difficult childhood, but I had an unconventional childhood. So I was diagnosed with ADHD at like 2 years old before they knew what it was.
Hmm.
And then later was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome and was fortunate enough to be one of the few people who grows out of it. And then with ADHD, it made studying really hard, really difficult. But I think being able to turn that into an advantage because I'm a nonlinear thinker. To go back to the earlier point, being able to make connections because your mind doesn't work in a conventional way is debilitating if you're trying to be maybe a scientist or something like that. But if you're a creative and you're trying to reach unreached places in thought, it's really helpful. And then my sister is disabled. She's autistic and has cerebral palsy and is 8 years younger than I am. So that led me to a lot of independence and self-reliance and a really vivid internal world of imagination. And so, you can kind of see the tracks being formed or the path being formed where I feel like I fought being a creative for a long time. I thought I wanted to be an engineer until I made a D in calculus, and then it turns out I just like to draw. So I've taken a bit of an unusual path in my career, especially just kind of having done a lot of different things. And my grandfather, he was a commercial artist for a while and owned an agency for a bit. And so I guess some of it was in my blood and I was just fighting it unnecessarily. Because once I found creative, it was like a fish in water. It was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I'd say the other thing that we've connected about is the importance of exercise in my life and going to the gym and staying active, because it has been one of the most tremendous mental health benefits I've ever experienced in my life. And you've said it, I agree. It's a necessity for me. So I know that there's an often huge mental barrier to getting started for people. They don't know where to start. They don't want to go to the gym and look strange, look like they're not knowing what they're doing, or go for a run and they hurt and all this stuff. But I would say that do it for you, because it's going to help you and it's going to make you a better person. It's going to help stress and anxiety. It's going to encourage those around you. It's going to benefit your health. And I think all of us who do this want to do it for the long run. So it's just such a tremendous benefit all around.
Well, amen to that. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. Always a pleasure. And I look forward to continuing our collaboration.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.